All right. Hello, this is 20 Minutes with the Titan. My name is Travis Lindsay. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship here at Cal State Fullerton, manager at our Center for Entrepreneurship and CSUF Startup Incubator, and I'm also an investor at Titan Angels. Today, I'm lucky enough to have Bob Godlasky. He is a longtime mentor in our program, all-around great guy. He's worried that he's going to say some things that we're going to have to edit out, but I doubt it. But Bob, thank you for coming, and please introduce yourself.
First of all, thank you for having me on your program, Travis. I'm very proud to be a part of the CSUF Entrepreneurship ecosystem. This is my 11th year. It started when I retired. But going way back in the old days of Bob, I feel like I've been an entrepreneur since I was 8 or 9 years old. I shined shoes for relatives and neighbors for a nickel a pair. My grandfather always gave me a dime. At 9 years old, I had a paper route, and I had various paper routes until I was about 13 or 14. But while I was working the paper route, I also had other jobs. For an example, I was a baseball umpire for the YMCA Little League as a pre-teenager. I got paid $1 a game, washed dishes at restaurants before I was ever even 16 and, at a workable age, but I was always eager and willing to make money. And I learned how to save money, not just make it and spend it. And I'm very proud of the fact that I paid cash for my first car when I was 18. My dad and I got in a fight. I wanted to have the car when I was 16, but he was afraid my grades would suffer. So he wouldn't allow me to have one. But when I entered college, I wrote a check out of my account for every semester of tuition at the beginning of the semester. So I didn't have any loans. I didn't have any outside stuff, and I wasn't smart enough to have a scholarship. And I guess that leads me to my first concern that I might say something out of line. I kind of hate academics. I've had a repressed hostility for the last 50 years because I thought I was pretty smart. I loved learning. I still love learning. But I was preached to, and it was just boring as hell. I got in a lot of trouble. And I wasn't a troublemaker, but I was twice an alumni of the 3rd grade. Sister Mary Agnes told me I was special, and I got to sit right next to her knee at the front of the class every single day. And I think if JJ and you knew about that kind of stuff, Travis, I probably wouldn't be in your program.
No, Bob, I've heard it before. I can't say I commiserate. I guess I was either smart enough or dumb enough to just toe the line just enough to get by. I remember in my one of my high school chemistry classes, I hold the dubious distinction of having the lowest possible citizenship grade in an AP class at my high school.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it. A lot of education is extremely, extremely boring. And the way I view it is, you're there to learn. And that's what the goal is. It's not to be taught to, it's to actually go out there and learn. And so one of the things that we do is our student consulting program, of which you've been a member for longer than I have. And just tell our audience about what you do in there as a mentor, working with the students on projects.
Yeah, I was going to come full circle from my poor academics to how much I love the student consulting program. It is golden. It's stardust. It's the most fantastic learning experience I think we can give our students. They get out of the classroom. They work with real companies, with real problems, real people, and they have real hands-on experience by the end of semester with solving problems. And you just can't teach that kind of stuff in a classroom. I read a history book a long time ago for pleasure about Michelangelo, and he didn't paint the Sistine Chapel. Frankly, he had a couple of hundred of student intern apprentices that he taught how to paint. And they got on the scaffolding and they mixed the frescoes and stuff. And that's how you teach. And that's why I love the student consulting program so much. And the benefits to the business owners is just unbelievable. Invariably, we deal with small businesses and they don't have a lot of staff. And very often the CEOs are so hands-on into the business, they're not really managing, guiding, and overseeing the larger business. And sometimes they lose sight of their competition in their marketplace and their customers. But the students get to work collaboratively. I'm delighted that most of the experiences I've had was very warm handshakes at the end, and we exceeded the client's expectations.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just sat in on, I had the pleasure of sitting in on 6 of those presentations yesterday in my entrepreneurial leadership class. And every one of the clients was very complimentary, even during these times. I mean, we're recording this on May 7th, 2020. So we're still all stuck at home on lockdown. All the clients, they commended the students on the work that they did, especially under these circumstances. And it was just a tremendous experience. In addition to the consulting program, I know you're a mentor in one of my business plan classes this semester. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that experience as well.
Well, it's another kudo for the entrepreneurship program. The lead student for the students that I coach is actually an education major. She wants to be a speech pathologist, but she wants to have her own office, her own business. And she was smart enough at 22 years old to take this course. And I don't find that. In fact, I think you know it, but for the sake of our audience, I also have mentored for the last 10 years at 6 other Southern California universities. And there's these silos in education that for the life of me, I don't understand. The scientists and engineers aren't working with the business school to take their ideas to a new level. But Karen, my student in your class, somebody convinced her to do that, or she decided on her own. And she's an amazing young woman. I'm inspired by her goals professionally. And I think she's going to knock it out of the park. I really like working with her. So let me say this now, Travis, for anybody in the audience that is a mentor or thinking about becoming a mentor, I can't tell you how much this enriches your life. I'm an old man, but I'm excited to, get dressed up and go to school on the days that I'm supposed to be there or meet with the students. I get more out of it than they do. When I was younger, somebody gave me a poem from Robert Frost, and it was called, the name of the poem is What 50 Said. But the theme of it is, when I was young, my teachers were old. And as Robert Frost became an old man, at the end of the poem, he says, now that I'm older, my teachers are young. And I've never known that to be more true than my experience at Cal State Fullerton.
Yeah, no, so to provide our listeners with a little more context, and that's a great poem. I mean, the way that I always go into any interaction with somebody is, what can I learn from these people? Everybody has something to teach you. So that's a great mindset, and it's just another reason why I love working with you and others like yourself. All the mentors in my classes, I was fortunate enough to have, I think, like a dozen this semester, 3 in yours, and gosh, I think like another 10 in the other one. So a baker's dozen. But to provide a little more context to what our program is all about to people who are listening, and this is probably a rehash of what people already know, but basically what we do in our entrepreneurial classes here at Cal State Fullerton is we want to make them as what we call high impact as possible. And so what that means is that our students form teams, usually 4 to 6 students, and they work on real world kind of projects. In the class that Bob and I are working on together, it's business plans. But for most of the students that are working in teams in our class, in our programs, they're working on consulting projects for local businesses. A lot of those projects, they do come with a fee. You know, we charge to keep the program running. That's how we do it, even though we're a nonprofit. But like Bob was saying, I mean, you just get some tremendous insights from our students. And then, you know, just to tie it back to that Robert Frost poem, even if you've been in business for decades, or your business has been around for 100+ years, there's always more that you can learn from the people who are going to school right now, because they're going to be your customers in the future. They're going to be your employees, and eventually even the leaders in your organization. So it's always a good thing to be in touch with those people. So Bob, what else should we talk about? I know that there's a lot that we could talk about. We could take this in 1,000 different directions, but I think one of the things that I want to ask you is, well, first off, your professional background, it was in marketing, correct?
Yeah, I was a senior vice president of marketing for a while. I was director of marketing in Southern California for Alpha Beta stores for the non-food part of their business for about three or 4 years when I was a very young man. But I started out, you know, as a clerk, 16 years old, and I really liked the business. I mean, that's where the rubber hits the road, is in a retail store. At least it was in those days. You had the huge consumer products companies like Procter & Gamble, Revlon, Coca-Cola, Budweiser, but they put together their marketing plans, and where it reaches the consumer is inside the store. That's where the consumer gets separated from her dollars to buy those products. And it was exciting to me. We knew when a product was good or bad immediately, because it either sat there or it had to be restocked constantly. And it just got in my blood, and I changed my major from engineering to business before my 4 years were over. And I never looked back. I became a store manager, a district manager, a regional manager, and senior vice president of marketing. And it was a great career. I spent over 40 years with the American Stores Company. And I was lucky because by the time I'd reached top management, my stores were in the Intermountain area, which is 11 Western states, not including the Southwest or California. And we were in 57 different markets, from Little Rock, Arkansas to Great Falls, Montana. And our competitors were always local family-owned businesses or co-ops. And you had to be entrepreneurial to compete with those guys. We had stores all over Texas. Texans don't want watermelons from California. They want Texas watermelons from the Pecos River Valley. And we had to source those, et cetera, et cetera. And one story I might be able to tell, we were having a real competitive nightmare in Wichita, Kansas. We were getting our butts kicked from a little company called Dillon Foods. And I didn't know what to do, but I was touring some stores in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the store manager excitedly wanted me to meet this guy named Wayne. And this great big monster of a guy, barrel-chested, his fists were like ham hocks. And he had a really nice tooth, I remember.
Just the one?
He was a watermelon farmer, but he wasn't just a watermelon farmer. He was the world championship watermelon farmer, state fair winner in Oklahoma for 10 years in a row. He grew 150-pound watermelons in those days. Jesus. And I asked him if we could buy some, and he said, absolutely not. I sell to farmers markets and little guys, and I don't want you big city boys pushing my guys out of the county. I said, what if I trucked him to Kansas? He said, well, in that case, I'll give you all you want. And so for the 4th of July weekend, whatever year that was, we advertised the world's largest watermelons. And we had filled up our parking lot, and our customers were parking across the street in our competitors' parking lot and walking with their families and kids across the street. We had to get these little Bobcat, which are little uh, little tiny bulldozers
Yeah.
to get watermelons out of the truck. I mean, they weighed 100 pounds a piece and you couldn't get your arms around them. It was amazing.
Those sound like really big watermelons. All right. So with still in that frame of mind, as a marketing expert, and you may be too modest to say it, but I'll say it. You are a marketing expert. You know, right now, the world is kind of upside down. What would you be doing as a marketer of smaller, medium-sized businesses during this time?
Well, especially if you don't have a lot of customers or you're closed down, get out of your house and go look at what's out there. I mean, a lot of people have just in business take for granted that the competition is what it was, and that isn't always the case. Look at the food industry. Every single food purveyor that got on board with home delivery and they got established with home delivery, they're going to have an afterlife. I'm not sure how many restaurants are going to make it that don't do that. And so it's those kind of things. And that's what I like about the freshness of the young minds of our students. They think differently than established business leaders. They're very in touch and comfortable with technology, new apps, new software, and so forth. And those things are out there. So there's going to be winners and losers in this afterlife of COVID-19. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be business as usual. And what can you be doing differently? But you certainly need to be paying attention to your customers.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry to break in, but I just saw a news item that Nordstrom, they're closing 15 of their stores, including the one over here in Riverside, California, permanently. So yeah, that's horrible news. Basically, any brick and mortar retail company, they need to adapt, or they're going to be in trouble. They're probably going to have to close their doors eventually.
Yeah.
One of the clients from my leadership course this semester, he runs escape rooms. Are you familiar with those things?
Just by reading about them.
Yeah. So basically, you go in and people pay for this. They lock you in a room, and then you've got to go around solving clues, and so that you can get out of that room again. I've done it once. It was interesting. It was kind of fun, but obviously they can't do that now the same way. And so what they've done is they have transitioned over to a virtual escape room, and they've started doing some of their first Zoom escape rooms within the last couple of weeks. And I think it was actually in consultation with my student team that they started doing that. So that is bringing in some revenue for them, and they're adapting. They had to adapt. I mean, I don't know what Nordstrom could have done. They could have, I don't know. There's many different things that could have been done. But yeah, getting to know your customers, that's something that we talk about with our students in our classes all the time, right?
Exactly. By the way, I had a friend whose son-in-law was a Nordstrom sales clerk, and I urged him to get out his Rolodex and start calling the clients and see how they're doing. He's got a profile on their size, their favorite colors, their favorite, preferences, and start a conversation. People are going to continue to wear clothes, although they may not be wearing suits. It could be casual, and there's all kinds of new fabrics out there that are eco-friendly and UV sensitive, et cetera, et cetera. And so those sales are out there, to be made. You're just not going to do it in the old conventional way. People are going to continue to eat. They're going to continue to socialize. But there's a solution for bowling alleys. And, this has gone on for years and years and years. But it's the innovators. Think about James Watson at IBM. He inherited the company from his father, and it's after World War II. And their whole business model, revenue stream is punch cards. Governments, big banks, and institutions companies like General Electric were the big companies, and they made these binary punch cards for the digital machines. And he could see the machines getting more and more sophisticated. It was just the baby steps of the computer age. And he knew that this wasn't going to last forever. He had to make a jump from punch card business into making computers. The bankers were against it. His board of directors were against it, but he had vision and he was passionate and he worked hard, and he made IBM into a world giant.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good lesson to learn, but unfortunately, I think too many people don't learn it or don't believe in it too much. Because I mean, innovation in general is scary, because you've been running your business the way you've been running it, in the case of Nordstrom, for decades, probably maybe even more than a century. I don't know, maybe not, but decades, and everything was working. But even if the coronavirus didn't hit, the way that brick and mortar retail stores are operating has already been evolving. And in order for those stores to survive, they have to innovate. I think the obvious example here is a company like Blockbuster.
Yeah.
I think they actually had an opportunity to purchase Netflix early on in the 2000s for not that much money, and they passed up on the offer because they thought nothing was going to change, and maybe they were a little bit wary of that change. And so, yeah, that's one of the key lessons that we try to get across to our students, that you have to, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to embrace change. You have to be comfortable working with ambiguity. There's no way you're going to know for sure if something you do is going to work or not, but you always have to be building something new, right?
Absolutely. You know, a book that some of the viewers that have a business curiosity might like to read. It's called New Ideas from Dead CEOs. The author's name is Todd Buchholz, but New Ideas from Dead CEOs. I think it's about $12 or $15 on Amazon, but it's roughly 27 short stories about how A.P. Giannini founded Bank of America, how Sarnoff founded ABC Television, the story that I just alluded to with James Watson. I read that in this book, and something that kind of plays into retail. Back during the Depression era, there was a Eastern European refugee that was trying to escape Hitler. Her name was Helena Rubinstein. Her father was a chemist, and as a little girl, she loved beauty, and she learned how to make very good skin creams on her mother's kitchen stove. She went into Saks Fifth Avenue in New York City and had a meeting with the president of the company. And he said, "Look, young lady, I love your product. I love your passion and enthusiasm, but all of my cosmetics is leased to the companies like Elizabeth Arden, Coty, Revlon. They buy the cabinets, they pay me for rent, and then we split the profits. You're not in a position to do that." And she said, "Well, I'm not going to give up. I just like your store, and I thought you should have my wonderful product." And he was kind of charmed by her. And he said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you a 2x2 space beside the front door on the outside. If you want to engage the customers coming and going, get a little tea cart or a table, and you can do that." And that's how she started her business. In a few years, she was inside Saks Fifth Avenue. And today we call it kind of pop-up marketing, where you can do something temporary at a street fair or an event, and do your retailing that way. So there's that idea of temporary selling has been around for a long, long time. Carl Karcher didn't start out with a store. He started off with a little hot dog wagon. It was literally a wooden, what we would think of today as an ice chest, but he had blankets in it to keep the hot dogs warm. And he sold down on Los Angeles Street and Temple Avenue in front of the courthouse every morning. And that's how Carl's Jr. got started.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a tremendous lesson to learn because I think a lot of people think that if they need to, or if they want to start a business, they need hundreds of thousands of dollars and they need to launch at scale, so to speak. But the opposite is really, really the truth of the matter. I know I show a slide in my classes where it goes over the list of, I think it's Inc., like 5,000 companies or 10,000 companies. And it's those are basically just the quickest growing small businesses in the world. And they asked the founders, hey, how much money did it take you to launch your business? And for the majority of them, I believe it was less than $10,000, $10,000 or less. So yeah, I mean, if you have an idea, you need to figure out some way, what we call minimum viable product to put out there and start trying to sell and seeing if there's actually a customer base for what you're doing. You're going to learn a lot from doing that, and it's not going to cost you your whole livelihood.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, it's called, you and I know it's called testing the concept. And so if you had a restaurant idea, before you spend all the money on a lease and everything else, you'd probably want to have a food truck. But before you bought $100,000+ food truck, maybe you want to go to Mike Thompson's RV and rent a small RV for $60 or $75 a day and get your recipes, and that RV is going to have a little kitchen in it, and take it to a beach or an event or something, you know, a 10K run, and try your recipes out and see if people will pay you and rave over your product.
Yeah. No, I mean, like Martha Stewart, when she first started out, she, I believe, was like baking pies, and she was selling them at some store, like a pop-up store. So she had her own little like booth and was selling them there. So that's how she got her start, just out of her kitchen at home. And there's so many kitchens nowadays where you can rent space from them and make your product. Maybe you could start a small catering business so that you can get out there and meet customers and basically just get increased knowledge about what you're doing out there so that you can actually build a bigger business later on. It's not something that you just pop into, you know, or that you pop into at scale. You got to start. Most people have to start at the bottom. All right, Bob. I mean, this has been great. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I'll keep my funny stories to myself at this point.
Are you sure? Give us one.
Just one?
Yeah, just one.
Well, we were talking about my experience with education. You know, I've washed my hands so many times in the last 9 weeks. I found the answers to my 8th grade math quiz.
All right, I think we'll leave it at that. That's a good one. Thank you very much, Bob. I've had a tremendous time doing this, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you for having me, Travis.
Thank you, Bob.